has a way of stopping us from realizing the truth, but not only that, fear also has a way of making us ignorant to the full truth.
You didn't understand him because he was older at that point. So you never knew him when he was younger. You only knew him after he had gotten sick.
As a child, I was always fearful of one person, and that was my great-grandfather.
He grew up in northern Ohio, and that always drew him back to where he was born. He always wanted to make it like the guy that made it big and came back home.
Well, he'd always be on committees, and he would try to help manage them and get things going.
He was a hard worker, and he was always trying to better everybody's life around him.
Children cannot always understand why people are the way that they are, and that was especially true in my case. I had always seen sickness as something to be afraid of. I never knew that not all illnesses are contagious.
He had cancer on his left leg, and it turned out to be a very, I can't think of the word, bad cancer, so they did radiation, and that radiation damaged his leg. One night he said to me, "Sue, my foot is cold." And I called the Cleveland Clinic, the doctor, and they told me to get him in there the next morning.
He was never scared of being sick. He just took it head on.
He lost his leg December 16th, 2005, and October 2006, he had 5 bypass of his heart. It's amazing that he lived through that. And the doctor said he didn't even have to use the electric, whatever they do to get the heart going. As soon as they got it hooked up again, the heart started.
He wanted to do something nice for the family before his health got too bad, so he decided to take us all to Florida for Disney World. Near 5, and he was in a wheelchair at that point. And a lot of the rides he couldn't go on, but he just enjoyed everybody else, enjoying their time.
So he wasn't ready to give up. He did enjoy living because he wasn't ready to give up at that time.
You may be wondering why I was afraid of him. And the truth is, I don't know if I was actually afraid of him. I was afraid of what I thought would happen if I spent too much time with him.
He thought the sickness had started when he was in the Air Force working on some of the high-tech equipment at that time that had damaged some of his veins, and because of the proximity of the equipment he was working with, and they think that maybe had started it back in the 60s, and when he got older it just developed.
Now that I'm older, I'm able to understand that he truly was a good man. I now appreciate him as a person, and I value the work that he did with the Air Force.
He was an airman. He was in the photo interpretation, and he is the one that identified the missiles in Cuba.
He didn't tell me anything what he was doing. He told me he was developing film. I didn't know till probably 15 years later what he was doing.
I always joked with him that he almost caused World War III because he identified the missiles and he got the whole ball rolling, basically.
He always did a good job. He was proud of what he did. That was the main thing. He was proud of what he did in the Air Force.
Right after the fall of the Soviet Union, he went there on a business trip, and they had already known about him through his prior military service and what he did in business. And they invited him to the Cosmodrome and other military installations and to some government buildings. And when he left, they presented him a Russian victory flag from one of the states that were in the Soviet Union. They didn't want it anymore because the Soviet Union had fallen and they wanted to move forward.
And now I would like to move forward as well, because I believe that life is full of lessons, and I think that I have learned greatly from this one. I will now look at the full picture before judging someone, because you never know what you will find out.